The Newstalk Google Presidential Debate. A lunchtime special thanks to Bord Gáis Energy. Live from Google HQ Dublin on Newstalk 106 to 108.
Good afternoon, and you're very welcome to a special edition of Lunchtime on Newstalk 106 to 108 FM and the very first Newstalk Google Presidential Debate. I'm Ivan Yates.
And I'm Jonathan Healy. Today we are joined by all 7 presidential candidates for the most interactive political debate ever held in Ireland.
Now, over the last 3 weeks, you have been submitting the questions you want asked of the candidates to youtube.com/newstalk, and today I'll be putting them to the candidates on your behalf. You can watch us and tell us what you think of their answers on youtube.com/newstalk and on newstalk.ie.
You can always text us as well. 53106 is the text number at a cost of 30 cents. You can follow us on Twitter as well using the Newstalk hashtag or the RS11 hashtag. We're also going to be followed on Google+. Throughout the debate, we'll be monitoring social media reaction to what's being said with Stephen O'Leary from O'Leary Analytics and talking to listeners from around the country who'll be joining the conversation this afternoon via Google+ Hangouts.
So, I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to all our 7 candidates, and let's get straight down to it. Our first question on the candidates' vision for Ireland comes from Darrell Walsh in Tipperary. Darrell says, as a teenager, I don't see much hope for myself when I finish college. I would like to know what the candidates are hoping to do for the youth of Ireland, and if they have a vision for young Ireland, as we're needed now more than ever. We are the future. David Norris, I'll come to you first. What's your vision for the youth of Ireland?
Thank you, Ivan. Well, my vision is one where I would put at the heart of my presidency human rights and everything I've struggled for. I've come in from the outside. I've shown that it can be done, but I understand the difficulties of young people. There is hope. Look at this wonderful building. Look at Google. Look at the fact that this is the first interactive debate. So there is hope, and in the 3 pillars that I announced, mental well-being and health, enterprise and culture, at the centre of those was the issue of the pressures, especially on young people, many of whom have been driven to take their own lives. And I placed right at the beginning of the campaign these issues at the centre. And I believe that as somebody who has been on the outside, who has come in, who understands the difficulties of this country, and who has reached out to the young people, I believe I can offer a presidency that is inspirational.
Sean Gallagher, particularly for the young people, what's your vision?
Well, I guess the reason I'm standing here is because of the involvement I've had in youth organisations such as Feroga and Macra, Naferma, and I'm hugely committed to that. I think the most important thing our young people need is a sense of confidence personally, is a sense of hope for the future, the ability to contribute and to participate, not to be afraid to come forward to sing their song. I think most importantly now at this time, what most young people want is the opportunity to find employment, so that they do not have to emigrate to Australia and Canada and New Zealand as we see them doing so in such numbers. What can a president do about
that? Stopping emigration?
Well, I think the solution to emigration is the opportunity and availability of jobs. How that's created is both at home to the indigenous industry and enterprise sector, and also, as we have seen, Mary McAleese develop for the first time a model of supporting trade missions to develop tourism, trade and foreign direct investment, just like as we see here in Google, the many thousands of jobs created for our brightest and most talented young people in the almost 1,000 international firms that have chosen to locate here in Ireland.
Michael D. Higgins, how do you connect with young people in this campaign?
Well, I've connected very well. I went into the Spun Out debate, which represented 400 young people, not only those in colleges, but from all over the country in different backgrounds, apprenticeships or whatever. And I won't waste too much time on it, but I went in at 29% and I came out at 47%. And you'll know yourself, Ivan, that that's a good calculation.
Well, what about the point that you're just too
old? The point that is being made about, so I do connect with young people. I think it's very important too, that as I look back on the debate, people, all the candidates have, I think, love Ireland and have made very positive proposals. I think what people want, what young people want, is they want real participation. I've said that of the seminars which I've announced, the Open Presidency seminars, the first one will be on youth. It will be on young people's experience with administration. Are they being listened to? About youth suicide, about youth immigration, about youth employment. I think as well, and it is very important, that they want to be offered something substantial. As we prepared for that spun-out consultation, they didn't want to be offered just sympathy. They wanted to be offered performance. And I would argue that in that time when I was in cabinet, for example, I who believed in the creative side of things, but I created jobs in the film industry.
But isn't that the point? Isn't that the
jobs.
problem for young people
Yes.
with your candidacy, Michael D, that you keep talking about the past, that this has come 10 years too late for you?
But you see, I'll give you a practical example. It isn't. This morning I was talking to Gabriel Byrne, for example, about young people in New York. A young man who was 14 years in New York, out of documentation, and simply loves home. And I discussed with him how we could use the diaspora. The work is already there, you see. If you have the networks that I have, for example, in the creative industries, you can use it to connect to other things. And I'm talking not only about being creative in the areas that Gabriel represents in the United States and in Europe, but be creative in science, drawing on the networks we have through our humanitarian work, through our work in peacekeeping. That's why I say, and what I have to say, and I say it about young people, and that is they have not asked me for a single selfish thing for themselves. What they want is a new country, a country in which there will be substance to what is offered to them. And they also don't want to be excluded from the intellectual debate about the kind of Ireland they want. And then over on the other side, older people, and I've met many of them, don't ask for a single thing for themselves. They ask for a country for young people. So what you need is a president who is able to speak with confidence and listen and perform for all generations.
Mary Davis, what's your special message for graduates leaving school with no prospect of a job?
Well, to believe in themselves and to have hope in the future. And I have very practical experience of young people because I have 4 young adult children myself. And in raising them, I've always instilled that belief that they can overcome any obstacles in their lives and achieve. And I have encouraged an entrepreneurial spirit in those children, so much so that 2 of them have started their own employment and their own industries, and they're going extremely well. And I would like to encourage similar situations with other young people. I also said from the outset that I would appoint a young person to the Council of State, and that I would have. Not at all. It's not tokenism. We have to think of different ways of doing things. Of course, if you have a young person on the Council of State, what you are doing is giving them a voice, and you are also instilling in them that somebody cares about them. Because today, young people do feel separated from the political system, and they do feel disenfranchised, and they do feel that they have been let down by us as adults. And the other thing that I would do, and I have said it in relation to my first 100 days in office, I would convene a number of conventions at local level. I've already started that in my campaign of bringing young people and groups together, of listening to their issues.
I heard all that, but I mean, like, are young people not particularly cynical of you as the Kango Queen?
Well, I don't think you can dismiss young people just by saying, or dismiss what we're saying because you say you've heard all that. I am one of the candidates that has laid out exactly what I would do in a very practical way in the first 100 days. And I think for me, having worked in any organisation or any board that I've served in, I have brought my experience, my expertise, and in fact, I have been a great role model for many women who still find themselves outside of organisations and businesses and boards.
Gay Mitchell, your message for young people?
I believe if we make the right decisions now, we could be on the cusp of massive recovery. I believe we have to buy into the only plan that is working. The government cannot continue to spend between 13 and 20 billion more a year than it brings in. As they are, after 225 days in office, restoring confidence, dealing with the public finances, people are starting to invest in this country again. Foreign direct investment from the United States in the first half of this year was up 49%. I want to be part of a team that says we are open for business. Do not take soft options. In 1997, if John Bruton had been returned to government and we worked with that government of the day, we would not be in the mess we're in now. And I say to people, face this storm. We can come through this storm. We can make this country a better place where young people will have jobs here in Ireland and not abroad. a message will go out, if you elect me as president, that you're buying into this restoration of confidence. You're buying into the enterprising spirit. You're supporting somebody who has more contacts in Europe than anybody else running for this election, and in the African, Caribbean, Pacific, where I've spent half of my time working for a better world, where we can export product. We can export our agricultural product. I'm the person with those contacts. I'm the person who has the belief that the way forward is to face into the storm and not shirk it, and to protect those who are weakest. If we take easy options now, we're doing what we did in 1997, and we're going to, in my view,
but surely that's the job of government, the job of the executive. What they're looking from a president is charisma, and according to the polls, you're not providing it.
Well, charisma doesn't provide jobs. If you look at anything I've ever done, I've been successful at it. As chairman of the Public Accounts Committee, Lord Mayor of Dublin, I invented the Impact Literary Award.
But as a career politician, they don't want a career politician.
This is the point I want to make. This is a job for a person who knows politics. The president is part of the national parliament. The Dáil, Senate and the President make up the national parliament. If I become president, I will hit the boards running. I know all of the people personally from my last 7 years on the
You're an insider.
I know all the people personally on the Economic and Monetary Affairs Committee in Parliament, the people who this week are making decisions on the future of our currency, the future of our country, the future of our continent. And I say to the people, if they listen to what I'm saying, face into the storm, let's take the decisions that we need to take and protect the weakest people. This country will recover. We can be on the cusp of massive recovery if we stop taking soft options and do what is right for the sake of our children and for the next generation.
Martin McGuinness, do you hope to be a voice of young people in the park?
Yes, I hope to be a voice for the voiceless, for all those who feel betrayed by the selfishness and greed that we have seen over the course of recent years. I believe in the 1916 proclamation, particularly that section which talks about cherishing all of the children of the nation equally, which obviously has not happened. And I believe that young people want to see someone who will clearly be associated with them and the concerns that they have. That's why I made it clear from the very beginning, and I think I was the only one of the candidates to make it clear, that I wasn't interested in the presidential salary, that the presidential salary would go back to the Irish people, not to any political party, not to the Exchequer, and specifically taking 6 young people who are unemployed off the dole queue and paying them out of the presidential salary. I know that's symbolic, but it's done for a greater purpose. It's to make it absolutely clear to those people who were responsible for driving the economy into the ground. And who were they? They were the speculators, they were the bankers.
And do you think Sean Gallagher represents them?
Well, I do think that there is no doubt whatsoever that Sean has been up to his neck in Fianna Fáil for many, many years. And there is the...
But that's not a crime. Some people say you're up to your neck in the IRA.
It is not a crime for Sean to be involved with Fianna Fáil. But Fianna Fáil were the party that ran the economy into the ground. Fianna Fáil were the party that were involved in the brown envelope culture, the Galway tent, and were involved in betraying the people of Ireland. Now, I think what people who are young people within our society want to see is someone who will stand up for them, who will stand up for Ireland, who will be a voice for the voiceless, and somebody who has a track record also in delivering jobs. And I believe over the last 2 years, I have a very strong track record, for example, in attracting 14,000 foreign direct investment jobs from the United States of America. And that's why I was very pleased to see that Bill Clinton has taken on the responsibility of trying to encourage US corporations and multinationals who have not yet invested in Ireland to do that. If anybody has a special relationship with Bill Clinton and with Hillary Clinton, I think I do.
Dana, your view in terms of how the President can best relate to the needs of young people?
Well, first of all, I'm a mother myself of 4, and in the European Parliament, I was part of the Youth Education and Culture Committee for 5 years. And what I found there is I found in my own home and in this country. Young people want fairness, they want to be heard, and they want to be respected. And that, in fact, is guaranteed to them, or should be, within the rights as a citizen of this country.
But I have to put it to you that your brand of politics is typical of yesteryear conservatism that young people find anathema.
Well, in that case, why was I the first ever to open through the councils the ability of an independent
That's not to do with
to
young
run?
people.
Indeed,
young
it is,
people tend to be
because
liberal.
the young people who are listening know that they now have a chance to take their place at this podium. that they can go forward, that it doesn't belong to the political leadership. As I say, they want fairness, they want respect, and they want to be heard. And what we have at the moment, as we are speaking, we have decisions being made by decision makers in the EU and by our representatives there.
Well, I want to go to question 2, and I'll put this to you first. Question 2.
Please, if I could just finish this, which will deny the voice of our young people and the people of this country regarding our budgetary, even our fiscal means. And Google would not be here were it not for the fact we have a low corporation tax. That is now in the balance. And that decision, we must include the people of the country in that decision.
Well, I'm with you. Let me put the second question I have from Stephen in Dublin, who asks, do you agree, Dana, with same-sex marriage and adoption?
And I was just waiting for the question, because I'm always given this question first.
Would you rather I wouldn't ask you?
Because I'm a practicing Catholic, as I believe, hands up, most of us are, apart from, are you all practicing Catholics?
Yes, we are, Dana.
All right.
May I just say,
and yet, I am always asked this question
for those who can't see,
first.
it was pretty sheepish. Most of them didn't either put up their hand or kneel down or do anything. Let's stick to the question. Does anyone have a view?
Yes, yes.
Sorry, that's right, David.
I think we should respect everybody's spirituality. I do think it's very important. Young people in particular, where we started this discussion, the kind of open society we want is one of respect. And respect means that you don't ask people such questions as, are you practicing or are you not?
Could you please answer my question? My question is, Michael D., do you agree with same-sex marriage beyond civil partnership and adoption?
Yes, I do.
David Norris, do you?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that I am a Catholic. I was in Christchurch Cathedral yesterday because of time constraints I couldn't get to St. Patrick's. And we said the right Nicene Creed, as you would know.
I don't want a sermon. I just want to know, are you in favour of same-sex marriage and adoption?
Of course I am, and I spoke very clearly on that. I was the person who introduced the first civil partnership bill. That took a lot of work. It wasn't provided for me by an outside interest. I did the work myself. That actually moved it up the agenda. We eventually got a defective bill where children are not protected.
Well, it is a yes or no question. Sean Gallagher, do you favour, as I say, beyond civil partnership, which is being provided for, do you favour same-sex marriage and adoption by same-sex couples?
I think it's important to be inclusive, certainly, and I have no issue with same-sex marriage. As I stated when I was asked the question some weeks ago on the Late Late Show, I am unsure about the adoption issue solely because, as a former youth worker, I am unsure about any impact that might have on the developmental needs of a young person. That's not to say...
So you're against gay adoption?
No, not at all. Let me just make the point.
To have two daddies is a bad idea, is that it?
I'm making the point that I am unsure because I don't know about the research and I haven't studied it, but I am very open.
You don't know?
I am very... Exactly.
All right. Don't know, Mary, or do know?
Yes, I do know, and I absolutely believe in equality, in same-sex marriages, of course.
And adoption.
I think, and adoption, yes. And I have experience of knowing a couple in the US who have adopted a child with a very severe learning disability, and I have seen the care and the love and the attention that has been afforded to that child. And I think that's important than anything else.
Well, you've answered the question.
It's the provision, what we provide for our children, a warm living environment and a home that they can call their own.
Gay Mitchell, are you quite happy with two mums?
I've made it clear that I don't want to do anything that would weaken traditional marriage. I did support civil partnership, and I've said let that bed in and let's see if there are any remaining problems. And
so far and no further?
I know. I've said I keep an open mind. Let's see how civil partnership
goes. But you're
goes.
Cautious about it?
I am cautious because I note that we're making very important decisions affecting children and affecting marriage, but I have left the possibility of this when we see how civil partnership works. It's only just been introduced. Let's see how it works and then see if there are remaining problems.
Martin McGuinness, are you equally cautious?
No, I want to live in a modern Ireland, an Ireland where discrimination is banished and where equality rules. And I do believe that people have the right, if they wish to get married, to get married. I think that quite clearly throughout the world this is a debate that people have dealt with over the course of recent times. And I see no reason whatsoever why we should be trying to discriminate against any section of our community. And to refuse to accede to the rights of people who are in these sorts of relationships is, I think, a form of discrimination which we should be ashamed of.
You're listening to the Newstalk Google presidential debate, coming to you live from the Google headquarters here in Dublin. Now let's go over to Jonathan to see what you're making of the candidates' answers so far. Jonathan.
Yes, indeed, Ivan. Lots of people are reacting to this Newstalk Google presidential debate. People, of course, are listening on air. They're listening online. They're watching on YouTube as well, because this is the YouTube interactive debate, youtube.com/Newstalk. And they're also watching in our Google Plus Hangouts. We'll have more about that a little bit later on. We'll try and drop into one of those to see what they're making of the debate. And not to forget, of course, there is an audience here at Google headquarters and some very active tweeters in that audience as well, from what I can see so far. One of the things that has come through, Ivan, believe it or not, is that people are saying the candidates are looking a little bit tired at this stage, that it has been quite a long campaign and it's taking its toll.
I should say they have no makeup on,
no
apart
makeup
from maybe the ladies in question. Carry on, Jonathan.
Yes. Also, the candidates all mentioning the Google there, saying this is an example for the future with question of youth. Pat was on text asking, have the panel had previous access to the questions that you've been asking, Ivan? Now, to be fair, the questions were all on the YouTube website, youtube.com/Newstalk. They would have been able to see them all there, but they didn't know specifically what questions we were going to be asking. And just one of the other interesting tweets that has come in that has been brought to my attention there, essentially what people have been asking there, they've been asking questions about the children, and the two female candidates were speaking about their children. The male candidates who have children didn't mention their kids at all, so people asking why that might have been.
Okay, the video question?
Yeah, we have a video question as well. A series of questions from candidates on the Constitution. The first of these comes from Alan Gray. He's in Dunedin in New Zealand, and it is a video question.
I'm not getting sound on that.
While we're waiting for that, Ivan, could I make a comment, please? Because I think it's very important to realise, with regard to adoption for same-sex couples, there are already existing children, and their rights have been very severely damaged by the Civil Partnership Bill. This was why I was originally going to vote against it, but the very nasty amendments put down by a small minority made me able to join all my colleagues. And I said then it was a proud day, not for me, not for Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, Labour or Sinn Féin, but for the people of Ireland, that a measure of decency had been obtained. But to exclude from the consideration of the bill the existing children, I think is cruel, and I think it's an abuse of children, and I was ashamed that that happened in that bill. I think it was wrong. And I think the language was hurtful as well.
Okay, Michael, if I might just go to and I'll come to you, Michael, on this. The video question was, isn't it appropriate that our constitution be updated to reflect a modern, pluralist republic, and for religion and references in particular to deities should be left out? Michael, do I put that to you? Should God be taken out of the constitution?
Well, before I get to God, I'd say I have 4 wonderful children. They're in their 30s. I have my daughter, Alice Mary, who's worked in the human rights area. My son, Michael, has worked in the human rights area. My son, John, and my son, Daniel, who is working on economic development. And
we don't need your family history, please.
No, but they're all
in just tell us, are you in favour of God in the Constitution or not?
They're all in their 30s. The question was about, should we amend the Constitution? The Constitution is 75 years old. There is an opportunity of amending the Constitution, and it's one I hope everyone will take. And that is, next spring there is to be a review of the Constitution. There will be representations from a citizens' forum. That's very important. There are many things in the Constitution that should indeed be looked at. Even the very thing where we are today, that young people under the age of 35 can't enter the contest. The issues in relation to the powers of the presidency in referring a bill.
Sorry, is it God in or God out?
Well, I think that there should be references that will reflect an inclusive society. In relation to how you word it, really, you don't prescribe in advance. You listen to people. I think that whoever is president for the next 7 years must have that capacity to be able, you must be able to take in the character of the society. Because, beyond any of us as candidates, what this decision on Thursday is about the next 7 years. And it's about Ireland. And it's about the kind of Irishness we want to... I believe that Irishness should be generous, equal, participatory, and I hope that the other questions we were asked earlier, that it will discuss also the participation of young people in our institutions.
Okay, David Norris?
Yes, well, I think it's important that we take a measured view of this and look at the history. That gives us certain lessons. The PDs proposed taking God out of the Constitution. They lost 50% of the Irish people. They then lost the nerve and put him back in. And they lost the other 50% of the people. So I think you need to be clear. It needs to be a principled decision. Yeah. I believe in the total separation of church and state. And I say that as a believing Christian. I think it's better for both institutions to be quite separate.
Mary Davis, the majority of the people, on paper anyway, according to the census, are Roman Catholics. Our Constitution has made various references to the Catholic Church and to God. Should that change?
Well, yes, I think you're right that the majority of people, yes, are Roman Catholic. My own husband is actually Church of Ireland, so I do understand the diversity and having lived with that. However, I do think that we live in a pluralist society and we should, as part of the reform of the Constitution, look at all areas that do need to be changed. And I believe this is one area that needs to be looked at seriously to ensure that all faiths are represented.
Okay, Kay Mitchell.
I have no difficulty with the reference to God in the Constitution. I don't think it has done us any harm, created any difficulties. When we did give a sort of precedence to the Catholic Church, we took that out in 1972. I would have no difficulty with an amendment which, for example, would allow people to exercise options. If I'm elected president, I will take the traditional oath of office and I will swear by Almighty God, but I'd have no difficulty with another option being put in there, for example, for people who do not believe in God to affirm in a different way. But, you know, when we talk about an integrated society, the vast majority of people in Ireland believe in God in one form or another, and they're part of the integrated society.
Majority rules.
No, I do not see that this has done us any difficulty whatsoever. And I would just say, as part of the integration, I want to make it very clear, because I think it needs to be said, if I am president, Catholics, Roman Catholics and other Catholics will be welcomed in the Phoenix Park, as will Protestants, non-believers, gay people, no matter what the colour of your skin is. But there seems to be a belief somehow that if you don't believe in God, you have some superior set of principles. I don't share that. I think we need an integrated, not an assimilated society where everybody is respected, including people who believe in God.
Martin McGuinness.
Well, I do believe in God, and I do believe that there's nothing wrong with God being mentioned in the Constitution, but I'm also very broad-minded. I recognise that in an inclusive society, particularly where new people have come to our shores in the course of recent times, people believe in different gods. And it should not be beyond our collective wit to find a formula of words that would clearly show that we are an inclusive society. Not just for those people who believe in God or the different gods, but indeed those people who don't believe in anything. If I could just mention one part of the Constitution which I think badly needs changed and which has hardly been mentioned during the course of this presidential debate. Peter Canavan, who's supporting my campaign, one of the greatest Gaelic footballers Ireland has ever seen, outlined that in 2003, Tyrone, and he was part of that team, played against Armagh in the All-Ireland final. 30 players stood along the red carpet waiting for President Michael East to come down and shake their hands. 14 of those players went on to become all-stars that year, but not one of them had the right to vote in a presidential election. And as someone who absolutely believes that Derry, Tyrone, Fermanagh, Armagh, Down and Antrim are as Irish as Cork or Kerry or Dublin or Galway, I think that as a part of the Constitution.
Well, we will come back to United Ireland. Sean Gallagher, when I asked you on Friday morning on Newstalk Breakfast, did you believe in God? You sort of groaned and you said you believed in a higher power. Should we put a higher power in the Constitution rather than God?
Well, that's a big debate about religion and whether there is God. The question about the Constitution is, I believe that any change to the Constitutional Convention next year that would look at this issue, I think the objective and the outcome would be to find a formula of words that is inclusive of those of differing religions and indeed of none. And so I think it could be broadened to be inclusive.
I think everyone's for inclusion, Sean, like correct. God in or God out.
Well, you see, my God and your God may be different, Ivan.
I don't know. I'm not going for presidency. You tell me.
But well, we have to respect the fact that people believe in different things. For many people, God is a higher power, whatever that religion may be. And I want to make sure that everybody who might stand in this platform in the future, who may come from different religions or none, would be just as equally welcome and included and be able to take the oath for the office.
Dana.
Well, I have no problem with people of other beliefs or of no belief. I've worked all my life in a business, in show business, where you know, whatever people believe, you just find a common ground where you can work together. And so I have no problem with belief or non-belief. As far as the Constitution is concerned, I have no problem with the reference to God within it, and there's a big shock for you. But I think...
In fact, you'd be totally opposed to removing it. What if a government of the day came along?
Excuse me, I did not say that.
Oh, well, what would you say?
What I'm going to say now is that I think the convention that has been proposed, I watched this convention method in Europe, and it was anything but democratic. The real powerhouse of a convention is in the presidium, who do not meet in public, but who lay down the blueprint and the guidelines for where the convention will move.
But if a convention came along and proposed, as the PDs did, to take God out and you were president, would you oppose it?
And as the Labour Party has already stated that they want a secular Ireland, at the end of the day, what our Constitution says, that it is the people who have the final say.
Well,
it is not the political powerhouses, and it is not the presidium of a convention which has proved in Europe not to be democratic.
Can I just say in relation to the presidium?
Michael and then Gay.
Well, first of all, the convention that is taking place will be composed of three parts. There's the citizens off the electoral register will nominate a third. There'll be a third professionals, and there'll be a third from elected members. And whatever is decided will go by referendum to the people. And there isn't a presidium that is directing anything, and there is no conspiracy. So I think what's very important about that convention is that it be used, and let us use it as an opportunity to address all those other issues of exclusion that have been there. What I'm saying is people should be preparing for it. I agree with Martin, for example, that we should look at the issue of the exclusion of voters. We should also look at the issue of votes for immigrants, for example, for short periods. We should look, as I have said already, at the Article 26, the referral process to the Supreme Court. So let's use it positively.
Okay, you want to come in there?
Just 2 points. Just 2 points I want to make. First of all, I don't understand why 1 million people who are unionists in Northern Ireland should be involved in picking the head of this state. The president of this country is not the president of the 26 counties. The president is president of Ireland, the state, and that's what it says. Éire in Irish, Éire in English, Ireland. That's what it says. And I don't think we should be going beyond that at this stage. There are issues about a united Ireland and what we would do in that context in the future. Can I say in relation to Dana's point about the presidium, John Bruton was member of that presidium. John Bruton and all the other political parties, Prunchius de Rossa, Pat Carey, John Gormley, all of them appeared at the European Affairs Committee, which I chaired, before they went out to the convention, before they went to the presidium, and when they came back. All the documents were put on the internet. It was the most open and democratic convention ever held, and brought forward a treaty after everybody was consulted, and even national parliaments were involved. They all of their documents, all of the documents were put on the record. All of the documents were put on the record, and all of the convention proceedings were open to the public, including, incidentally, members of national parliaments and the media.
You're listening to the Newstalk Google presidential debate. The time is 12:34. We'll be with you all this lunchtime till 1:30. We're going to take one commercial break during the entire programme, and we'll be back shortly.
The Newstalk Google presidential debate, a lunchtime special thanks to Bord Gáis Energy on Newstalk 106 to 108.
Join the conversation on air and online at newstalk.ie.
60,000 customers came back to Eircom last year, and all of them had a reason to do so. For some, it was for discounts of up to €10 per month on their mobile bill with eMobile. For others, it was for free music streaming and downloads for as little as 32 cents with Music Hub. But most of all, they came back for real value. Because with an Eircom bundle, you get all of these things and much more from just $39.99 a month. To switch to an Eircom bundle today, call us on 1800 503 303 or visit eircom.net. Promotional prices for 6 months, subject to availability. Terms and conditions apply.
I was looking for an exemplary home insurance policy. This is not my voice.
This is actually me. So I was shopping around for a good home insurance deal, and I called FBD. FBD. Well, they weren't really like that.
Hi, Jenny speaking. How can I help?
They gave me a 20% no claims discount because I'd been 2 years claim free. It was no big deal, just a good deal.
Call 1890 617 617 or go online. FBD. Our policy is you. Benefits apply to the FBD Home Multi-Peril policies. Terms and conditions apply. FBD Insurance plc is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
Spend less this week with SuperValue. SuperValue quality Irish leg of lamb and 5 kilogram roosters half price. Budweiser 20 bottles and Guinness 12 cans just €15 each. Plus Mars fun size range just €2 each. Spend less with SuperValue special offers. Enjoy alcohol sensibly.
Newstalk 106 to 108.
PPI Station of the Year 2011.
I know we've got 2 separate referendums coming up on October 27th, the same day as the presidential election. I know the first referendum is about judges' pay, and that it asks if judges' pay can be reduced in line with reductions in the pay of other public servants. And I know the second referendum is about whether or not the Dáil and Seanad can investigate individuals and make findings in relation to their conduct when inquiring into matters of public importance.
Order up.
Oh, and I also know how to bake a mean soufflé.
Be informed about the 2 referendums on October 27th. Read the guide or visit referendum2011.ie and be sure to vote. A message from the Referendum Commission.
There's only one thing better than a woohoo, and that's the big woohoo, now on at Argos. And right now, we're giving you 3 for 2 on all toys, including our top brands like Lego, Barbie, Fisher-Price, Cars 2, Chad Valley, Sylvanian Families, and Designer Bear. For a big woohoo! Find it, get it, Argos it. Terms and conditions apply.
Our truck mailer campaign has seen an increase of 25% in sales in fleet branding, and it is still working for us.
The revenue generated from that was significant, so that worked really well.
We got a 10-fold increase in business.
GrowMyBusiness.ie from An Post is about growing your business too, using direct mail. It shows you how to increase turnover, work with existing customers and attract new ones, with business tutorials that are ready when you are. It's easy, free and importantly, effective. Register now at GrowMyBusiness.ie. An Post. Do more.
The Newstalk Google presidential debate. A lunchtime special thanks to Bord Gáis Energy. Live from Google HQ Dublin on Newstalk 106 to 108.
Welcome back to the Google headquarters here and to the Newstalk presidential debate with Google. This is the only debate that's focused on questions submitted by you via youtube.com/Newstalk, and you can also watch the debate live both on that and newstalk.ie. Our next question is a video question all the way from Cambodia, Alice, and she has a video question about job creation.
Hi, my name is Alice Burke. I'm a journalist originally from Cork, now living in Phnom Penh in Cambodia. I've been here since April and I'm working as a full-time journalist here. Employment obviously is a huge issue at home and was the reason that I left because I couldn't secure any kind of solid work while I was there. The candidates have been discussing the prospect of job creation and improving employment levels, but the role of the President in actually affecting change in this area is debatable. Could you outline specifics as to how you feel the President could actually make a positive change for job creation in Ireland? Thank you.
Thank you, Alice. Sean Gallagher, you put out your stall early in play that one of the main missions you saw as the new President, if you were elected, would be to help with the job situation. Be specific.
Well, this is, having listened to people and having been involved in enterprise creation, both working for the enterprise boards and serving on the North-South trade body Intertrade Ireland, set up under the Good Friday Agreement. My life has been about enterprise, and I believe that it is the only solution to unemployment. What can a president do? Well, I think anybody who watched the programme on Mary McAleese's presidency last week on TV will have seen that she was the first president to step into the role as a type of economic ambassador, that her state visits coincided, working hand in hand with the ambassadors in various countries and working with the IDA.
But whoever's president is going to do that.
Well, nobody did it before. Yeah. It is about transforming the role and to put that front and centre. And looking internationally, Ireland's reputation is important, but so too is the image of Ireland, attracting
Well, you
more
speak of
tourists.
the image of Ireland, but how do you feel about the image of electing a Fianna Fáil builder as president?
Well, one, I'm not a builder, and two, I'm an independent candidate. And if I could go back to the question, Ivan, that you asked me, The importance of having a president who is an entrepreneur, I think, is a significant message to send out. Enda Kenny speaks consistently about sending a flare out around the world that Ireland is open for business and a place to do business. If you think of Mary Robinson's greatest contribution when she stepped forward about social inclusion and about Manana Heron, her greatest contribution was her living embodiment of the first woman to become president. That sent out a clear message to women everywhere in Ireland. I want to focus with Enterprise Ireland and Board BIA, with Tourism Ireland and with the IDA to represent Ireland and to do exactly what Bill Clinton has been talking about doing.
Michael,
use our diaspora to bring and sustain jobs here in Ireland.
Michael D,
that's what people want.
What about that point?
Yes,
to have a hard-nosed businessman in the park who can talk the talk with other business people.
Well, let me say first of all that when Mary Robinson was president, I accompanied her to Argentina. And in Buenos Aires, we met most of the major decision makers, and represented at that meeting in Buenos Aires in Mary Robinson's presidency were representatives of pharma chemicals, representatives of international information technology, and also agribusiness, particularly agribusiness, where you have homegrown countries now represented in 20% of the leading exporters. So that happened in Argentina. In Paris, where we had set up, for example, a relationship about getting Irish artists into galleries, she represented us there again in Paris for l'Imaginaire Irlandais. I was the minister. And then in Germany, into the Frankfurt Book Fair, because we were selling books and our reputation.
Well, what sort of image do you think electing Sean Gallagher would be in terms of the international image? Do you agree that electing a Fianna Fáil builder is a fair charge against Sean Gallagher?
No,
He absolutely denies it.
I've never built a house, and you need to stop saying that, because sometimes you, who are a thought leader, need to be conscious of your language.
Well, I'll let Michael.
Well, will you accept the premise? I want to clarify.
Sorry, I'm only
interested
interested in your guys' views, ladies.
But it's important.
But I want to know, because yesterday on the Dunphy show, they didn't put a tooth in it. They had an endless discussion about the fact that electing you would be, the image would be sent out, electing a Fianna Fáil builder. So it's not my words.
No, but I just want to clarify, because you use them. So
yeah, no, I know. I'm really.
Are you accepting that I am not a builder? Are you accepting the fact I'm not a builder? I was a subcontractor, the same as plumbers and plasterers and electricians in this country. And it's important to clarify, and it's an important message to send out. There is nothing wrong with the 250,000 small businesses who are the backbone of this economy, who create the jobs for that young lady to stay in Ireland.
I want to let.
But if I might finish the point, first of all, I would make no negative person comments about any one of the 7 candidates. That's why I set out my literature in print on the 1st of May. I think that the way it works, if I might explain for only a second, when I mentioned my visits with President Trump, I was the accompanying minister. You were in the cabinet. Now, what happens is that the president, in fact, is a signal to the country. For example, that Ireland is a creative society, that it has all these capacities, as I say, endless capacities. You wouldn't, now as president, I know what that role is. But what you do, and it is very important to send a signal, there is where the president is also important, is there's nothing wrong with being an entrepreneur. But it's very important that it be an entrepreneurship with ethics. So what you do now...
Are you saying Sean Gallagher's unethical?
No, I'm not. Please, I'm not at all.
Sorry.
I'm simply saying that we should recognise...
Or do you have any view about, like, there's a lot of stuff in the media about state subsidies, several £100,000 for his companies. Do you have any problem with that?
Well, I don't comment on the media. The media comments on the candidates. But if I might finish the point, there is a need for it. I'm simply saying for entrepreneurship that is ethically based as well. Because you have social entrepreneurship. I think that as well as there's something that has come up in the campaign, and I think it's very important. There were people caught up in the myth of the economy that was the Celtic Tiger, almost through no fault of their own. They're in negative equity. There are now many of them commuting. You remember we made programmes about this. Some of them are threatened with unemployment. And what you have to offer to them is a version of the economy, and the president working for a version of the economy with social connections abroad through networks in the great areas I mentioned, and with exporters. And at home encouraging those who are genuinely creating jobs.
Martin McGuinness, do you think it's a good idea to someone who has business experience, Dragon's Den and so on, in the park?
Well, I think the people of Ireland will make their own judgments about how Fianna Fáil destroyed the economy over the course of their tenure within government. I think also that in terms of the question asked, that it's very important that whoever is in the job recognises that every president reinvents the presidency. And for example, whenever the power sharing institutions were established in the north. The last thing that we expected would be that there would be this world recession. But Peter Robinson and I and Ian Paisley decided that we would go out and try to attract foreign direct investment. Our critics said, what's the point in going to the United States of America? You won't get one job. Well, we went to the New York Stock Exchange.
No, but the point there, Martin, is that is in your job as an executive minister. But we have a minister for jobs. But how does the president do that?
Well, let me finish the point. The first day we went to the New York Stock Exchange, we met a man called Duncan Niederer. As a result of our relationship with him, we brought 500 jobs into the north. HBO came with 700 jobs, Citigroup an extra 500 jobs. I think that the President can work positively and constructively with the Taoiseach and with the Minister responsible for providing jobs, because the President is an ambassador, and I think that I have got contacts all over the world. I think I can lift the phone to David Cameron, I can lift the phone to Barack Obama, I can lift the phone to Hillary Clinton and be heard. So I think it is important that for me anyway, going forward, that I be a jobs president, to someone who recognises the duty and responsibility of all of us to put the economy back on track, to attract foreign direct investment, and of course, just as importantly, to continue to encourage our own local entrepreneurs.
Gay Mitchell, are any candidates who are selling us a job creation package through their candidacy selling us a pup, really?
Let me just be very clear about this. I let others talk about their success as business people. The success that brought our country to its knees because of the construction industry and the tent in Galway. I have been a successful businessman all my life. My business is politics. This is a political job. Let me be specific if the lady in Cambodia hasn't gone to sleep by now.
Sorry, what are you alleging about Sean Gallagher?
I haven't mentioned anybody. I'm talking about myself and my capacity.
No, you're throwing it out there.
The cap certainly fits. I have been a successful politician in everything I have done, including in my 7 years in the European Parliament, where I recently got MEP of the Year because of my work on the Economic and Monetary Affairs Committee. Now let's be specific. We have.
But sure, if you such a great successful campaign, why aren't your own leadership supporting it?
Let me answer the lady. Well, actually, I've looked after my business better than some, Ivan.
No, my question to you is this. How much support have you got from the Fine Gael party?
Let me answer the question of the lady.
You're getting a fraction of Fine Gael support.
Let me answer the question of the lady in Cambodia. We have the infrastructure, we have the extra terminals built, we have the hotels built, we have the roads built. Tourism can provide another 350,000 jobs for this country with all the spin-offs that come with it. And key to that is an energetic president who can get out there and work with the diaspora. I have shown that I can do that. That is a specific. We already have that infrastructure. We can bring those people here, fill those hotels and bring in revenue into the country.
Mary Davis, do you think this is a credible thesis that the personality of the president can actually impact on 450,000 unemployed?
I think the President can have a huge influence in relation to getting this country back, and that's what we should be focusing on, and we should be focusing on a people's agenda rather than anything else. And yes, entrepreneurship has a role to play, but it's a very small role in relation to other areas that the President must become involved in. And what I would like to know is the track record of other candidates in relation to that and what they actually have done. Because in terms of entrepreneurship, in my own case, I have actually started a company from scratch, from absolutely nothing, an empty room, and built it to an organisation that raised 60 million and staged one of the biggest events that ever came here. That's entrepreneurial spirit. That's making big things happen. And as well as that, it's leaving a legacy of incredible change and making a profit and leaving funds behind in order to create a legacy and build on the developments that have already taken place. And that was in the area of intellectual disability. Social entrepreneurship is equally important, as, and Michael D referred to that, as entrepreneurship. In terms of getting jobs, I think that there is incredible energy that exists in our communities. I think there is an appetite for people to pull themselves together and to work together and to help each other and to assist each other. And I saw it very clearly with the man I met recently down in Limerick, James Smith, who was able to get a job. Yeah. No, but just to say, he was able to get a job because he had mentors in the business community sitting down with them, helping him and assisting him. We need
You've all been to the School of Communications, right? Dana, what are you going to do for jobs?
Well, I think any of us going forward, we all have our experience. I've been involved in business as an entrepreneur in business for about 30 years. And we will all use that to support the government and the IDA. That is quite correct. And it does help, I think, that to have to know people, as you know, as has been said. And I'm known probably worldwide on a first name basis. I also have dual citizenship with the United States. And as we look for a little bit of Ireland in American presidents coming here, I've been assured by the Americans I've spoken to that it would be very enticing to have a little bit of America in an Irish president.
Can I ask you bluntly, speaking of your American connections, could you understand that people would be reluctant to have a president in the park who was involved in sibling litigation from America?
Well, as I would like to point out, the fact that that was brought to the fore in such a low way, any family
but if you're
has
president,
their
it might continue.
Any family has their difficulties. And that particular dispute did end up in court when I was sued for ownership of all my recordings and on copyright issues. But that was not brought by me. That was sought by members of the press, where groundless allegations were put forward as truth. And I'm so sorry that you've brought that up.
No, my
Google,
point was
which is going worldwide, which has nothing
but if
to do
you're
with
president,
this
you can rest assured it won't go away.
Which has nothing to do with this presidency, and which I am entirely innocent of. And I'm very surprised and indeed shocked that you would bring that up on Google. If you want to ask me questions relevant to the presidency,
no, I didn't go into the merits or demerits or the content of it. I'm just saying the president being involved in a row like that. I didn't expect you to be on the low level that some of the press have been in this country. No
but however, I would like to continue with what I was saying regarding bringing jobs. Certainly any of us will support the government and the IDA. Of ourselves, we can only use our connections and our influence. But I would say that in the way, for example, the bank guarantee was rushed through in this country without any discussion with the people of this country, is giving us a situation where our indigenous businesses are struggling. As was once said by someone much more famous than I, if you hope to end a recession by high taxes and low wages, it's like asking a man to stand in a bucket and lift it off the ground by the handle. So in that way, I would absolutely ensure that any hugely important bill, like, for example, the bank guarantee, would be brought to the attention of the houses of the Oireachtas and the people of the country before they were committed for generations to a bill that they will never hope to pay off.
David Norris, can you bring one job to the park?
Well, first of all, can I say, I think that young woman in Kampuchea illustrated a massive problem. Over the last 3 years, 120,000 people have left this country. That's equivalent to the entire city of Cork. We've all been down to Cork. We've all visited the English market. It would be empty if they were all gone from Cork. So it's a very important question. And Mayor Davis asked about the track record. I'm happy to put my track record on the public's view. I started 2 companies. Both of them were successful. The Hirschfeld Community Centre, administered by a company in Temple Bar. It led to the development of Temple Bar. The James Joyce Centre, across the road from my house in North Great George's Street, which gave employment during the last recession to 20 young people in an area of very high unemployment. I have the track record, and can I say that Gay Mitchell quite rightly took the credit for the impact. It was a brilliant idea, Gay, and I'm sure you'll give me credit for being one of the 3 people who did the work in the background on it. Deirdre Ellis-King, Sean Donald,
one of the 3 people I
and
appointed.
myself. Appointed by you.
Appointed, yes, thank you,
and
David.
it was a great compliment to me that you saw my business ability and my capacity to do that, and I'm very proud of having designed the prize.
Speaking of being proud, since you re-entered the race and the nomination, have you failed better, in fact?
Well, I think I have continued, and I think that I've shown that in the face of difficulties, I was able to come back. And I know that you have business interests, Ivan, and that you are interested in betting.
This isn't about me.
No, but I'm just taking a point that the bookies, your colleagues, gave odds of 10,000 to 1 that I wouldn't get a nomination. And there were clear and determined efforts to stop me getting a nomination. I did succeed in getting it. So, of course...
Any regrets?
No regrets at all.
Right. Now, we have a question from Michael D. Higgins from Tim Brennan in Cork, specifically for you, but we can widen it out. Does Michael D. agree with cuts in social welfare and the attack on special needs children? I assume that's the special needs assistants in primary schools. Michael D.
Well, first of all is that I spent all of my time in the Dáil. I was 25 years in the Dáil, 9 years in the Senate, working for equality and inclusion. I'm not a member of the present Dáil, and in fact before the last general election I gave nearly a year's notice so that my successor could be elected and have time, and also that I could concentrate on what was involved in the presidency. The presidency's principal thing, just allow me to say this, it is important that you bring experience to your constitutional role, that you fulfill your ceremonial duties with dignity, remembering that you're representing Ireland, not yourself. And then we can all discuss then under Article 39 how you use discretion. But you have no discretion in relation to legislation that is proposed. My commitment for inclusion, my commitment, for example, when I argued for the establishment of combat poverty.
No, but you're putting yourself as a candidate representing one of the government parties. Do you support do you support austerity?
No, I'm talking about an entirely different economic model. I don't agree, for example, that you can cut your way back to economic growth. I'll answer your question. By the way, it's very important. I'm put into the field by the Labour Party, but I'm supported by independents in the Oireachtas.
So you suit yourself, you're a la carte about the issues you support your party on?
No, I'm not a la carte about it. I'll tell you what it does indicate, which may be of interest to you. It indicates an independence of mind. All my life I have in fact actually been noted for the way in which I have continually tried to look at the future. I want only to say this sentence, which is important. It isn't really only about any of our pasts in a way. It is about the next 7 years. You know, when this is over, this day week, who do people want for the next 7 years to be speaking for Ireland abroad? Who do people want for the next 7 years to be addressing these very issues you mention? To be, for example, without infringing on the role of the legislature, being able to talk about inclusion. That's the real test. And that's, I think, the test that will be put to us.
Martin McGuinness, could I put it to you, is this election, because it's political and it's political parties involved, is this an acid test of the government and their policies, in your view? I mean, is it valid to attack Gay Mitchell or Michael D on the basis of cuts in special needs teachers? You take it out on the parties in the election?
Well, as we stand here, people are waiting in trepidation for the next budget and how that's going to impact on them. And on the 2nd of November, £700 million is going to be paid to an unguaranteed bondholder. And when you think of the whole issue of welfare cuts, the fact that this year 200 special needs assistants would go, I mean, that would pay for special needs assistants for the next 120 years. So I think that's the tragedy. The tragedy in all of it is that austerity measures are going to impact on the most marginalised and disadvantaged within society. And of course, many children who find it very difficult to keep up in school are very, very dependent on their special schools needs assistance.
Sean Gallagher, do you see it as a valid issue to attack issues which the government are unpopular on?
No, I don't believe so, because I don't believe this is a party political election, nor should it be. And the candidates that are standing here are standing, I believe, on their own merit. And I would certainly not attack any individual candidate here for whatever party they represent, because they stand here as individuals. And I think it's really important that we do that. Mary McAleese, who was a member of Fianna Fáil in the past, was not a Fianna Fáil president. And I think whoever will be elected here will not be a party president. There will be a president for all the people. And I know that of all the candidates here, and I salute them for that intention. And we should not seek to make it a rerun or a rehash of the last general election or a fast forward to the next one. This is not, should not be about party politics, and is not a trophy for any political party. This is the president to be the voice and face of Ireland for the next 7 years.
But you're happy to take Fianna Fáil votes, aren't you?
I am happy to take votes, Ivan, from everywhere. And
so you're no longer in denial about the Fianna Fáil thing?
I have never been in denial, but I'm happy to take votes from everywhere.
You're keener to pick up the Fianna Fáil vote now, are you?
I am happy, Ivan, as you know, and I don't have a big party political machine behind me, so what I have to do is encourage everybody to come out on Thursday and vote for
Gay Mitchell, do you regard Sean Gallagher as a Fianna Fáil candidate?
I think Sean is a Fianna Fáil candidate by proxy, but because of the history, the recent history of Fianna Fáil he doesn't want to become identified with that. A lot of people out working for him are from that.
But isn't the message of the polls that people want a Fianna Fáil Gene Pool candidate?
Let me
they
just,
want to go back to the old values of entrepreneurship and so on.
Well, I wouldn't mind going back to the values of entrepreneurship. Let me just deal with the question that was asked. You know, I've spent a lot of my time on housing and social welfare issues and on prisoners and in the developing world. But I'm also a hard-headed politician. From 82 to 87, Garret Fitzgerald tried to get the public finances of this country under control. He was not allowed to do so. When we went into opposition, we supported a minority Fianna Fáil government to bring the public finances under control. That brought it forward the Celtic Tiger. And I say to people looking at this, stop taking soft options. We do not have to punish people who are frail.
This sounds like a party political broadcast.
I am saying this. If we are telling you there are easy ways forward, we're telling you lies. Bite the bullet and let us protect those who are weakest, but let us get our public finances under control so that confidence returns to this country and we can start creating jobs in this country.
Okay. Mary Davis, are you for biting the bullet?
You're right, but we're not doing it. Governments are not doing this. They're not protecting vulnerable people, and that's what's happening. And usually it ends up that it's people outside the system that are taking the leadership role.
But you said on a frontline programme, you said that you'd actually reject a bill if you didn't agree with a budget, a money bill.
A money bill, you can't. The president has no say
in
a money
bill.
The president has no say in a money bill. It has to be signed in, and I know that very well. Now, let's get back to what we're talking about. We're talking about vulnerable people being marginalised, and particularly in relation to the area of special needs and the cutbacks. And I do think that's disgraceful. And as a candidate, I have spoken out about it and will speak out about it. I know as president, you don't have a say in the policy, and the governments have that say, but we have a right to speak out. And we've worked for years to promote and provide opportunity for people and to bring them in as part of society. This is going back. This is setting people back a decade or more.
Okay.
It's not right, and we shouldn't accept
David Norris, hear it? Actively involved in day-to-day attritional issues of politics like cutbacks. You as president, would you see that as part of your role?
I think you send out signals symbolically, but may I say, to be fair to Sean Gallagher, I would happily accept votes from Fianna Fáil. I've always said that you
take them from anywhere at this stage.
Yeah, of course, at any stage. But I've always been against labelling. And I said when Fianna Fáil were getting the really worst stick, there are decent people within every party. You can't label an entire group. But the last two governments, unquestionably, were responsible for bankrupting the place and handing over our independence to a group of outside interests. And I voted against the tax amnesty. I voted against the blanket bank guarantee. And I was the person who brought up the whole question of the government abolishing combat poverty, hamstringing the Equality Authority, and trying to spancel the Human Rights Commission. That was the wrong approach. Instead of shoveling money into the banks, they're owned by their friends, they should have looked after the ordinary, decent people who are represented here.
Finally, Dana, where would you draw the line in terms of disagreeing with government of the day?
Well, anywhere where the government was clearly out of touch with the will of the people, or where they were not respecting the rights of the people. And in the special needs disability areas, there's huge difficulty for families today. I met people recently, a couple, who have to carry their 4-year-old child because their health board can't afford to give the buggy that she needs. Another woman whose special needs child can't get the care she needs in the school. So it means that the mother herself can't go out to work. She has to be with the child. So there are huge difficulties. And I think it comes back to what I said again. When the bank guarantee was agreed, it was agreed without consultation or discussion or debate with the people. And the President does have the right to raise issues in the houses of the Oireachtas and also with the nation. And I'm sure that no government would stand against what was in the best interest of the rights of the people. For example, within 7 days, we're going to pay $1 billion, an unsecured, unguaranteed, to Anglo-Irish Bank. And that's going to come out of the pockets of people who have nothing left to give.
Okay, you're listening at 1 minute past 4 minutes past 1, I should say. I think it's early morning, don't I? A Newstalk Google presidential debate coming to you from the Google headquarters. Now, Jonathan, Healy, you've been scanning what our listeners and online viewers What are they making so far of the debate and contributions?
Hundreds and hundreds of people have been getting in contact through Google+, through YouTube, through text message, also through Twitter. We're using hashtag Newstalk and hashtag RS11 this afternoon. On digital and social media, Ivan, 3,000 plus conversations have begun since the start of the debate, and it is continuing. We've got people right around Ireland and indeed around the world who are in video hangouts on Google+, who are watching the candidates and telling us what they think. Let's check in with one of those hangouts now. It's at the Club Lounge in the Sheraton Hotel in Athlone, County Westmeath. Ian O'Flynn is amongst the circle of people there. Ian, you've been watching on youtube.com/Newstalk. What have you made of the candidates?
Hey, Jonathan, I'm actually a bit disappointed in the candidates. That a lot of them have just directly not answered the question they've been asked. They were talking about youth, and it turned into jobs when there's families and youth and everybody being left out. We've very little sense of community due to the damage that's been done. I just don't think they're answering the questions. I'm very, very disappointed. I'm impressed with one or two things some of the candidates have come up with, but in general, I just think there's an awful lot of what people have done for the last 25 years and what Fianna Fáil has done in the history, but nobody's talking about how they are going to represent us in the presidency.
Well, you are involved in community groups. What do you want from your president?
I want somebody that will inspire us and be a voice for the people, of the people, not just pandering to the government directive. I think the president is an independent role, and they should be saying that instructing the government that they need to relook at some of the policies, like as they were saying about the 1 billion being given to Anglo, and I'm a parent of a child with special needs as well. I know about the cutbacks that are coming in, but it seems like we're just being told it's a bitter pill we have to swallow, and I don't think we always have to. We should always be, our president should be encouraging the government to look at different alternatives and how can we make it a fair and more balanced recovery from this recession. But I'm just very disappointed, and networking and all that is all very important in Europe and who you know, but the people need to know their president and know that they're going to be honest about it. And I'm just not getting the answers. I don't think there's full honesty in the answers that they're giving.
Ian O'Flynn in our Google Plus hangout in Athlone. Thanks very much for that. Ivan, just to let you know, there's been a lot of text messages coming in along those lines. David in Dublin sent a text saying, will candidates please stop trotting out the same old mantras? This campaign has been too long and predictable, he said. Interestingly, the busiest tags in Irish traffic right now are RS11 and hashtag Newstalk, and the busiest word in traffic is Gallagher. Ken on Twitter earlier said, it looks like very few willing to admit that they are practicing Catholics. That's one of the questions you raised earlier on. Stephen O'Leary is with me here as well. He's going through all of the digital and social media. He's going to try and pick out some trends for us before the end of the programme. Ivan, you'll be pleased to hear lots of people giving you credit for your chairing of this debate.
Right. Let me turn on to the next question from Kieran in Dublin. He asks, if elected, how would you respond to the Vatican in relation to cases of clerical child sex abuse? Sean Gallagher.
Well, this is a very difficult and emotional issue for many people. How would I respond? Well, I think this is a matter for government, a matter for the government to liaise if there are any issues. As head of state, I would want to be the voice of the people and to voice any concern or pain.
This is the type of waffle that the people are complaining about. Would you be in favour of expelling the papal nuncio or not?
How, Ivan, you ask a question. The issues are not, can I expel as the president anybody? This is a matter for government.
Are you in favour of it as a person, character, personality?
It's not.
Well, if you don't want to answer, I'll ask Michael D.
Well,
are you in favour of taking a tough line with the Vatican?
Well, first
of all, the role doesn't permit you to do it, Ivan. So you have to be very clear. What I would want to do personally is irrelevant. The role doesn't permit it. That's a role for government.
Some very sharp, straight points. I think that no law should take. The law of the state should protect the child, and the law of the state should take precedence over every other assertion. Absolutely. I think that in relation to the specific questions that is raised, the Taoiseach is under Article 28.5 keeps the President informed of the issues of the day. Now, 28.5 is very important because on that issue, the President would require to be consulted. But it also is a two-way traffic. Mm-hmm. In other words, the President is perfectly free to articulate what he or she has been picked up. May I give you a practical example, by the way, two that are very fast. One is in relation to, for example, the issues of the citizenship floor, below which no citizen would be allowed to fall. That's in my own electoral literature. I won't dwell on it. People can read it. But to your other question about people about jobs in the future, you know, in the area where the cultural industries in Europe, There are 427 billion is the value of that, and there are 5.6 million people working there. And if you, in fact, value creativity in communities in Ireland and link creative communities to the creative industries, there are thousands of jobs in it. And the President can be an inspirational source in speaking about the value of that creativity and offer hope to our young people. And that's very, very important.
You're getting very wound up there, but can I make the point to you? This was your election to lose, and you've lost it.
Well, that's a kind of a comment that really makes no sense at all. I think Thursday will decide that. You know, quite honestly, and I would be very nasty and say you'll have experiences I had about polling day, but no, Thursday is the day when they look at the images on the ballot paper and they really answer the question: who do you want to represent Ireland for the next 7 years? And who do you want to say at the end of the 7 years, well, I'm glad I took that decision, not for Michael D. Higgins or for anything else, or for, I believe I'm the best candidate, but for Ireland. And I actually respect all of the candidates here. I haven't said once, and I wouldn't say. I know that they all in their own way love Ireland, but the issue is what we bring to it. No, but we're entitled to say that, because you know what the young people said the last meeting I had was the young people said the last thing we want to be called is cynical.
How do you think
young people are not cynical.
Okay, how do you think the next president should react to the Vatican?
Protection and safety of children should be at the centre of every single thing we
Here,
do.
here.
Absolutely. That is essential. And I do.
Okay, where does that lead you to?
I abhor what has happened. And just because a child, the only thing they had going against them at the time being put into institution was poverty, and they were put into those institutions. And I think of it, I thought about it every time.
Do you think the
with my
Vatican
own
is
children
culpable
that
for
you put
this?
them to bed, you think of the horrific deeds that happened. None of us can accept those. And
no, I think there's unanimity about the horror of the abuse.
A president
do you think
can have
the
a
Vatican
voice.
is culpable?
Yeah, I think the church has a lot to answer for. Yes, I do. I absolutely think the church has a lot to answer for, and I think that it should stand up and answer for it. It has handled it appallingly.
Martin McGuinness, would you as president condemn the Vatican?
Well, I have to say I think one of the most courageous public statements that was made in the course of recent times was made by Enda Kenny, and I applaud what he said. I think that it is time to stand up to the Vatican, because the Vatican clearly is in denial on the issue of child sex abuse, as I believe are the vast majority of Irish bishops. I mean, for example, and I'm open to correction, I don't think that the Catholic bishops in Ireland have met since the Cloyne report, and that is now many, many months ago. And I think all they're doing by being in denial is betraying those people who love the Catholic Church. My parents were daily mass goers and went to communion every day of their lives. So how would they feel now about the stories that are coming out on a consistent basis about the betrayal of young people who were abused by a tiny minority of priests? I also think that the vast majority of priests in Ireland feel betrayed by the bishops and by the Vatican. I have many friends who are priests who do feel betrayed, that they are being led by people who are effectively in denial and not facing up to what is required to ensure that there should be change. I think the time has come when the vast majority of bishops should be retired.
Okay.
And
Mitchell,
younger priests who are in tune with the community should be put in. These are the people who will take the church forward. And I do say that as someone who is a practicing Catholic.
Gay, would you take a belt to the crozier for the state?
Actually, I used that term in relation to a former Archbishop of Dublin once. Can I say, first of all, I want a world where we have a strong moral sense in Ireland and where we're a powerful world influence. And I don't think we can be a powerful world influence if we let anybody show us disrespect. And I would distinguish between the Vatican and the Church. When the Vatican was asked a question by a judge conducting an inquiry here about children, that judge deserved a response from the Vatican. And as President, I would make it very clear to the Ambassador of the Vatican that I expect they would show respect for the institutions of this state, including inquiries set up by the Oireachtas. The other point I would like to make is this. We're great people at queuing up to have a go at the church, and you know, there are, in my constituency, in the poorest areas, many members of the church have really done a lot in the community, an awful lot more than politicians have done. And while we're looking at the church, we might look at ourselves. Are we going to continue with the same old system that we've always had of them and us? The government says one thing, the opposition says the other thing. Michael has made issues here today. Look, the Minister for Social Protection is a Labour minister. The Minister for Public Expenditure is a Labour minister. If we're going to protect the most vulnerable, they're the people who can do that, and I wish them well in doing it.
Dana, the Vatican, would you be constrained?
Well, as a practicing Catholic, I have no hesitation in saying that the abuse of children was very wrongly dealt with. Very wrongly dealt with. And it has been an appalling situation to live with as a practicing Catholic. I recognise that it was a minority, but one is too many. That does not matter. The one is too many. I think the government has to focus on bringing to justice those who abused or facilitated by hiding abuse of children.
Do you blame the Vatican?
I would say that you need to search before putting a label on who was responsible for it. As president, you would not be in a position to judge upon that, and that's why I say the government... So you don't blame the Vatican? That's why I say the government must pursue whoever was guilty of it or facilitated it by hiding it. But I would also say that there has been a real sense of carrying this burden as a practicing Catholic and for practicing Catholics throughout the country, who are sometimes made to feel that they are guilty of this. And it is not so. It is not so. But I am appalled as a practicing Catholic at what has happened.
David Norris, you said you're a Catholic, but I'm not so sure.
Yes, I am.
You're not a Roman Catholic.
I'm an Anglican. I'm not a Roman Catholic. But can I say, first of all, the Church has been guilty, but so has the state. Institutions like the Magdalen Laundries, Letterfrack, Artane, just down the road from where I live. There was a significant Magdalen Laundry in Sean McDermott Street. But there is a difficulty. And you see, the questioners came from a wrong premise, if I may respectfully say. The President cannot instruct the government. That was a phrase that was used. And one would have to, as President, welcome.
But would you publicly condemn the Pope, if you saw fit?
I think as President, one must respect the views of the majority of the people. But can I just say this? The great difficulty, and it's something that needs to be resolved in the interest of the Church, is the Church is both a state, the Roman Catholic Church, the Vatican State, and it's also the Roman Catholic Church. The Bible tells us to render unto Caesar what is Caesar and unto God what is God's. The difficulty comes from riding two horses simultaneously, and that means you get a kind of a chimera, you could get a mirage. You attack one thing, or criticize one thing, and it turns into a church, then it's a state. That's a great difficulty. And I have challenged the fact that automatically the Vatican representative, the papal nuncio, is always the leader, the doyen, as they call it, of the diplomatic corps. But I also have a good track record. In the Guardian ad litem, which was the principal protection for our children, in sponsoring the Stay Safe program, for which I got very, very harshly criticized by conservative elements.
Okay, we're moving towards the end of the penultimate debate. Frontline, of course, tonight on the 2011 Hours campaign. We have a few more questions, so I'm not going to come to everybody on these, but who wants to take this one? This one's from Dermot in Dublin. Do you believe the race for the presidency is being fought fairly by all candidates, and have the media been fair with their coverage? Does anyone feel they're unfairly treated? Dana, you're straight in.
I would like to say that as an independent, we do not have access to the same funding which political parties do, which is not actually termed as donation, and so it makes it extremely difficult for independents to run financially or even to get their nomination.
But if you get your 12.5%, you get your money back, don't you?
Well, I'm talking about going into the race. There's no guarantee what anybody will get. But if, for example, a political party starts, say, a dinner at $1,000 a head, which has happened, that is not a donation to that party. Whereas independents are scrutinised down to the very last penny. And I do feel that if we want the people to have a wider choice, if the people of the country wanted to be their president, then there should be a look at what happens with what's termed as donations to candidates going forward.
Martin McGuinness, do you feel the media have been unfair to you in relation to questions about the IRA?
Well, I mean, I've made it clear consistently, particularly since the primetime programme, that I will leave it up to the people of Ireland to decide whether or not I have been fairly treated during the course of this campaign, and not just by primetime. But I can tell you from travelling all around the country, there is considerable anger about this, and people are not slow in coming up to me to express their anger. But I mean, I'm philosophical about it. When I took a decision to stand, I understood that people would raise questions, and out of this will probably come a big debate about how people...
But did you feel a sense of entitlement because of your work in the peace process that it would be appreciated down here, and it hasn't worked out like that?
No, this is the second election that I fought this year. The first election I fought was the Assembly elections. I led the Sinn Féin party, along with Peter Robinson, who led the DUP, in all sorts of debates in the north around issues relating to the changes that had occurred. Peter Robinson and I were seen on the same side. We didn't have the same sort of negativity that some people have had to listen to in the course of the debate here.
And in summary of all the IRA stuff, are you proud of your IRA past?
Well, look at it like this. I was 18 years of age when the conflict started on the streets of Derry. People were being shot off the streets, beaten off the streets by the British Army and by the forces of unionism. And of course, there were all sorts of promises that the government in Dublin would come to our aid. Nobody came to our aid.
So you are proud of your
I am not ashamed of my past. I stood up when I had to stand up against the British Army and against the forces of the state whenever the people of Derry were being shot off the streets by the British Army. I'm certainly not ashamed of that, no.
OK, Gay Mitchell, do you feel you've been fairly treated in this campaign by your own party?
I think... Don't put me to the test, Ivan. Don't put me to the test. Can I say, first of all, I was asked a question on the public service national broadcaster that I never thought in my life I'd be asked. In the social media, there's been character assassination going on.
About what? I didn't
Well,
see
of all
that.
sorts of different issues, and not just me, but other people. I think there should be some ethical rules about that. I think the fact that the presidency goes on for too long, people are trying to invent questions to ask. And I actually got very few questions asked of me of why I want to be president, what sort of presidency I would conduct. A lot of it has been about whatever the latest flavour of the day was. And I really think there should be some rules about it, perhaps even a shorter period for the campaign, because the campaign is not concentrated into a few weeks. It goes on over a long number of months.
And do you feel honestly, when you opened this morning's Irish Times and you look at the poll, do you feel let down by the hierarchy of the party?
Let me tell you, I did not open this morning's Irish Times or the Independent or papers yesterday. I'm too busy campaigning.
Okay. Well, if I was to tell you you were on a very low single-digit figure, would you attach any disappointment to the party that is standing at 30-something%?
Let me tell you this. The last exit poll for my European election campaign...
Have you been hung out to dry?
...told me that I wouldn't even head the poll, the exit poll, and I did head the poll. When I went for the European Parliament first, they said I wouldn't take a seat. I took the first seat and headed the poll.
So what's your message to
My message is this, that I have won 14 elections in succession. I'm a businessman, my business is politics, I know how to do this job. I'm the best equipped person for doing this job. We need safe hands, a safe sense of direction to put this country back on a good road, and I am the best qualified for this job, and I want this job because I'm hungry to serve my country. That's the message.
Mary Davis, do you think you've been treated fairly? As I say, Quango Queen took up 10 days of the campaign. You were depicted as an insider. Do you think women have been treated fairly in this campaign? There has been a perception because of the two Marys they didn't want a third Mary.
I think it was a difficult campaign. I think it was a challenging campaign. And yes, I do think it was a very negative campaign overall, which was uncalled for. And I think in my own case, as soon as I began to increase in the polls, there was a concerted effort from various different quarters to look at that and see what could be said about my background. And because there was nothing there, because everything I've done with full integrity.
You say that, but like you're an attractive 57-year-old, not a 37-year-old. Did you airbrush those posters?
3 state boards. Look, I'm more concerned about people who are marginalised being airbrushed outside, to be honest, rather than
do you think there was ever a campaign where posters lost votes?
There isn't any of us here, I'd say, including yourself, that probably hasn't a bit of makeup on today, Ivan.
I wish I had.
So anyway, what I'm more concerned about is actually, and what the people of Ireland are more concerned about, is what Ian from Athlone phoned in and said. He was looking for a president to be a voice for people who are excluded and marginalised. That's what I have said from the start of my campaign, that I do want to be a president that can embrace the issues of unemployment, the issues of mental health, the issues of literacy, the issues of young people in relation to their mental health, and elderly people as well. Those are the issues that I want to embrace. And if people want a president who has the values that they espouse to as well, then they will come out and vote for me on Thursday next.
Michael D., do you feel you've been unfairly treated, either by the media, your opponents? I mean, like, let's be frank about it, you know, and I raised this at the beginning, that people feel that the energy that's required of a president is a difficulty. And I know you regard it as crude, but, I mean, life is crude. I mean, at 70, has that been the unfair treatment of you?
Well, I love the way you introduced it, because you said, do you mind if I say to you, you're too old or something? Which is, but frankly, age is something that I can do absolutely nothing about.
But the electorate
I don't
can
think
do
you can,
about
anybody
it.
else can either. But what I said, which is, it's a very interesting question. What is involved, I suppose, is energy. And all I would say is this, in terms of intellectual energy, it takes an effort that is maybe 1,000 times more than even physical energy. I write, I debate, I've gone all over the world, I speak for Ireland, I've been a voice for minorities, I've been a voice for Ireland abroad. I've done it. I've represented Ireland. But you come back then to physical energy. I've just completed 28,000 kilometres in the campaign since the 19th of June. I did many more before that. And late last year, I went to not just to Colombia on human rights work, which was very, very important, not only to the capital, but really to the remote areas where young men were being kidnapped to join narco-terrorist gangs in villages. And it is there I had a slight accident. And I reported, I spoke openly about it. No, I found I have been treated very well, really. In fact, actually, I've been treated. Remember, I was also dealing with the media and the Irish language. So that was fine, too. But I do
You don't think you've run a complacent campaign?
Oh, not at all. I mean, the one thing you will say, all I ask people to do is look at my record. I don't think I've ever been accused of being complacent. I have been accused of having, if you like, an intellectual curiosity, which I do. And this is what I'm trying to do. Look, in the end of the day, what's important is this election is coming at a historic time. The next 7 years are crucial for deciding how we will in fact define our Irishness abroad. And I also believe, and it's one of the striking things of all my literature, I believe in the power of the collective. I believe that what we can do together vastly exceeds what we can do as individuals. Okay. And that's the centerpiece of my campaign. And that's why I'm getting a very powerful response in every generation to that.
Sean Gallagher, in the last 10 days, you've come under critical focus, your business record, the question of company loans and so on. Do you feel the media intrusion on your candidacy has been fair or excessive?
Well, I accept the fact that all of us as candidates have got to be introduced to the Irish electorate who don't know our backgrounds necessarily, because of the fear that something might emerge down the line that in some way might impact negatively on the presidency and therefore on Ireland. I have found the tone somewhat disappointing and a little sensational at times. However, I found a very simple method for dealing with that is I stopped reading it. But I do believe this, that the media have an important job to do, and I salute them for that. But the media do not elect the next president of Ireland. It is the good people of Ireland who have that responsibility.
And do you not
they will
think,
do that. I think they're intelligent
given the main way the
it.
people knew about you was through Dragon's Den, that you are in fact achievement light?
Well, you know, I don't believe that. It's the diversity of my life experience. I have been a farmer and I have worked in agriculture.
Could Gavin Duffy, Bobby Kerr have been elected?
I have been, anybody who is over the age of 35 and who's an Irish citizen could be elected. And maybe if there is one thing that we have seen this election is that there is an opportunity for people to come from outside of the political arena to step forward to be the President of Ireland. You know, here's an important message. I have a diversity of background, not a politician. I was a farmer and worked in agriculture. I've been a youth worker and a community worker.
Who owns that farm?
I've been an entrepreneur. I've been in many sectors of that. And it is that experience, and we talked earlier about enterprise. What drives me about unemployment is the fact that I was unemployed twice in the 1980s. I understand that it is much more than just national loss of output. It is a personal difficulty that people have to come back and reinvent themselves. And if there's one thing I want to do is to make sure that less people and fewer people in Ireland experience unemployment. That's what's driving me to step forward to help this country.
David Norris, do you think you've been treated fairly over the clemency letters?
Well, can I say, first of all, I agree with Michael D. I think there is a nasty ageism around, and I deplore it. We've been legislating against it. We're talking against it, but it is still there, and it is still being used. With regard to myself, Harold Macmillan, when these sort of debates started off and television was introduced, said that it was rather like a mixture between the music hall and a torture chamber. That suggests Dragon's Den. If you're in the Dragon's Den, somebody has a particular advantage. But with regard to myself, all I can say is this. I've already received 2 apologies. One very fulsome apology from the editor of the Sunday Times, another one printed during the week in the Evening Herald. That suggests that something is troubling their conscience.
Okay, I'll leave you with the last word. David Norris. Jonathan.
Ivan, lots and lots of people have been getting in contact with us on digital and social media. We've had hundreds of messages through text, through youtube.com/Newstalk, Google Plus and Twitter. So much that we had to draft in Stephen O'Leary, our expert in analytics, to go through it. Stephen, the reaction online to the debate?
Well, there's been an awful lot of people talking. I think that's probably been one of the most interesting things, and especially from an international point of view. I think there's a lot of people outside of Ireland, Irish people, who've a real interest in what's happening.
Even though they don't have a vote themselves?
They don't, and that's come up. I think it's been one of the issues that's been raised by people who've been watching the debate, who questioned, whether or not they could actually get a vote if they were living outside of Ireland. It's something that they want. It's definitely something that's been raised. Also, I think, Stephen in Madrid said, could any of us imagine this 14 years ago? Could you imagine people around the world being able to tune into a debate, get involved, pose their own questions? So I think there's definitely an appetite for that. In terms of the actual candidates themselves, we haven't seen any major shifts in sentiment. I think, in lots of ways it's just been reinforcing, prior opinions that people had.
It's fair to say the questions that were asked were the right ones. The people just didn't get the answers that perhaps they wanted.
Yeah, and I think that's a common theme in this election. I think, repeatedly we're seeing that.
Okay, Ivan.
Okay, Jonathan Healy, Stephen O'Leary, thank you most sincerely for that wrap. I would like to thank all our candidates. I don't know, I've stood for 8 general elections and nobody ever running for Dáil has to endure the scrutiny that you've had. We wish you all well. I want to thank Google for hosting this debate, youtube.com and my own station Newstalk for facilitating this. I hope it's the first of many social media and interactive debates.
And thank you, Ivan. I think you did a fair job.
And I abused you all equally.
Yes.
Thank you very much indeed. So back over to Newstalk, and thank you for listening to the Newstalk Google presidential debate. Goodbye.